Record computer.
And
All
my
right.
mic sounds okay on your end?
You sound fantastic. And all right, we're recording now. To your point, let's just, that's what this is about. This is, kind of the Jason and James, every single what do we do this now? Every 2 weeks.
Yes.
We get on here. And okay, and so here is what I'm titling this show. This is going to become a series as going to be the Iron Sharpening Iron episode. So that's going to be an ongoing theme. And my first ever guest on the Iron Sharpening Iron episode is my friend, my future podcaster, a fellow escapee from corporate America, James Quandahl. How are you, my brother?
I am doing wonderful, and I'm just so grateful to be here. Actually, I'm going to steal a phrase from a friend of mine. He shared with me yesterday, I am unstoppable. He said,
Ah,
you can't say that you're unstoppable and not smile about it.
that's
So
true. I like
I'm
that.
unstoppable today. And
I
I'm
like
just so
that.
happy to be chatting with you and being on the record because we have these fun chats. And sometimes when we're nearing the end of a conversation, I'm always like, man, I wish we would have recorded that because
Right.
like I know it would help me to go back and listen to it
Yeah.
because I sometimes forget about all the great things that I'm learning from you. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you for saying that, James. And the feeling is completely mutual. And I want to give the listener a little bit of how the history of our friendship. So one day, dear listener, once upon a time,
Was
I
this
was
back in the 1800s
yeah,
or
once upon a time. No, I'm in my kitchen one day and I'm listening to the James Altucher show. And for anyone out there that has never listened to the James Altucher show or read any of James' books, the most recent one being Skip the Line, go do it now. If you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to just do something to feed a passion and then most likely monetize it, here's the way I describe, and you are about to prove this point, James Quandahl. Listener, listen to me. I like to think that you will be able to take things away from this show that you can actually go execute on, apply, and improve in some way. That's the whole deal with the improve always and always, right? Well, I think that James Altucher's podcast is the single greatest how-to podcast out there. It is a treasure trove of, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Wait a minute, you mean I can do that? Whoa, so that's how that happened? It is an actual, there is so much utility value. And I don't know how often you can really say that about a podcast. It's usually informational or entertainment or whatever, but there is so much utility value to the James Altucher show. It's really hard to describe. And one day I'm in my kitchen, I'm listening to the Altucher show, and he's talking to this guy, James Quandahl. And I'm just thinking, well, James is probably the other thing. This James Quandahl guy is probably just some guy that's crushing it on in e-commerce or science or neuroscience. I don't know. And I listen a little closer and I realize that you are the first mentee of James's project. Where how many is it 4 or 5 people that he's taking through this?
I mean, originally he was thinking maybe 6, maybe
Okay.
12. I think it's kind of just dependent on how it goes with the people.
Okay. And the deal is he's taking, you know, 4, 5 to 6 people over a 12-month period. Is that right?
That's right.
Basically just personally coaching and mentoring you on how to make $1 million. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and the big thing with that is it's not so much about the money, as you
Exactly.
said with Skip the Line. It's about changing your mindset and changing your habits and choosing yourself, which is another James Altucher line, so that you become the type of person who can make a million. The
Exactly.
million becomes irrelevant because on the journey to make a million, you become a different person and you value yourself, your time, and your friendships in a different way. And that's what the mentorships are about.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you said that, because it's whenever I tell people how you and I met and I describe it like that, I don't want anyone, especially to the listener out there who has never listened to the James Altucher podcast, I don't want them to think that that's what it's about. That's not who he is or what it's about. It's exactly as you described. It created this format, this platform for him to mentor. And so at the end of the episode, which, because this is what he did basically, right? He did kind of like we're doing. He decided to record one of your coaching sessions
That's
and
right.
publish it. And it was so engaging, the more I listen, this is phenomenal. I mean, getting to just listen to James teach a mentee kind of the basics of, wait, did you think about this? And that's how he teaches. It's not like, okay, first of all, take out your notepad, James Quandahl. It's typical James Altucher with, wait a minute, well, have you thought about this? The guy can just fly. His ideas are just, coming all the time. And at the end of the episode, James Altucher, he poses the question, so what can this audience do? Is there anything you want to tell the audience? And James Quandahl, you decide, well, I'm doing a podcast. If anyone would like to be on my podcast, here's my email address. And I'm listening, and I thought, I'm going to reach out to him. Listening to that episode, we're trying to do so many of the same things. And honestly, I can't really, it's so weird. And listener, please park here for a minute. Whatever you're doing, I want you to just give me your attention for just a second. Okay. This was one of those special moments where I had to go back and rewind to find the segment where you gave your email address. I took the initiative to do it. And I believe history will prove that was one, as small as that may seem, taking the initiative to write your email down and then go sit down at my computer and email you and say, basically, hey, I'd love to connect, was probably one of the smallest yet most impactful decisions that I will make over the next 10 years, because here is what has happened. And it leads to the title of this episode, James Quandahl, of Iron Sharpening Iron. For those of you who don't know, that is biblical. The Bible reads, as iron sharpens iron, so doth one man another. We need each other. We need relationship. We make each other better. It's kind of like, Tim Ferriss is always talking about being the average of the 5 people you spend time with. You've got to be very selective and curate those 5 people very well, because who we spend time with, who we use to sharpen iron with, is very important. And so here we had this first conversation out. Neither one of us really knew what to expect. We're just like, hey, so hi, how you doing? I'll come on your podcast. I've got a podcast. And we end up, man, just blowing through like an hour and a half of brainstorming, dreaming, and scheming, and sharing stories about why we are just 2 guys with microphones and some recorders and trying to figure this thing out. And you are on the freaking James Altucher show, and a friendship ensued. And now it has become a regular part of my monthly nomenclature is, okay, I'm going to have my every 2-week call with James Quandahl, and I'm going to get better for it. So that's the history of what led to this, the first installment of the Iron Sharpening Iron episode. I owe my interview that will be coming out next week with Dr. John Deloney to you. You introduced me there. I now have you shorten the degrees of separation to someone I had just discovered. I have no idea how I had not discovered Ben Greenfield before, but I mean, within like a week, I find out who this uber fitness, ridiculous, human guinea pig that goes by the name of Ben Greenfield, living in the mountains of Spokane, Washington. I find out who he is. Then I meet someone who's managed the project for getting his book out that I love. And it's just so bizarre. And I could go on and on. I could completely monopolize this conversation.
And I would let you do it too. I could turn this into the James Quandahl show, and I could just start asking you some questions. But I do want to fill the listener in, and maybe you, with a piece of that story that you don't know. And number one, as I'm sure a lot of you at home can relate to, it's lonely as you're building a business.
Yes.
And it's hard to find people who understand what you're going through, the good things and the bad things about running a business and growing a business. And the friends that you grow up with maybe aren't doing what you're doing. So you just don't relate in that same way. So before that podcast episode with James Altucher, where on a whim, this was unplanned, I was not planning on giving my email address out. I just was like, all right, let me just try it. And yeah, that was my real email address. those calls are never planned. I mean, we just start recording and we just talk. And he's like, well, what are you up to? And we have no clue where they're going to go. The last one, we ended up talking about chess for like 30 minutes, which I'm a big fan of. But I was praying.
By the way, I'm going to brag on you a little bit. You did take a game from James Altucher, who is a master. What's the level he's ranked?
He's a national master.
Yeah, and you took a game from him, right?
Official USCF title. And I did win one game, and I am proud to admit that I am his worst rated defeat online. So I'm the lowest rated person to have beaten him, at least at the last time I checked. So I'm quite proud of that. He did say, and I haven't unlocked this. Maybe we should work on this on our future calls, but I have not. He said I was underrated, but the numbers don't lie. I've played thousands of games, and that's where I'm at. But I was, before that show, before I released my real email address unplanned, I was praying. I was saying, God, please bring me someone into my life who understands what I'm going through and who can help keep me accountable and can help keep me disciplined and it can help keep me loyal to you. And because it's lonely. Yeah. And then out of the blue, I get this email from Jason and I'm like, all right, I'll talk to him. And then you said it was an hour and a half. I think it was actually like 2.5 hours, but
it probably was. Yeah,
it was great. And for the listener is, find that person, like find those people. If you're a believer, pray for them. If you're not, just go and find people who you want to be like or who are like you. But definitely continue to level up the people that are around you. And that doesn't mean like, okay, the friends I grew up with, I'm just not going to spend any time with them anymore. Like that song that we talked about growing up, like make new friends and keep the old, continue to make new friends, continue to grow and go and find people, because I can promise you, if you in your heart are lonely and you feel like you're alone, there are other people like you who were praying, as I was, for you to come along and to get to know them. And they'll help you. They'll help you grow, as Jason has. He's really pushed me already, just in the short time we've known each other.
Man, well, I'm very honored by that. And it's mutual. I told Jimlyn, I've told her so many times that we'll be driving down the road and I'm kind of, and most of the people that hear me on the podcast, I think I'm always just upbeat, crush it kind of guy. I'm like, no, I will whine with the best of them. I can throw a magnificently well-appointed pity party. No detail is left unturned at my pity parties.
Who sees that side of you? Like,
that would be Jimlyn, my wife. Uh-huh. And whenever I've told her numerous times exactly what you said. It's so hard chasing a dream and doing it all by yourself, because there are those moments where, as Stephen Pressfield, what he calls the resistance, and that pushes the self-doubt in, like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Shouldn't you grow up and be doing something responsible? And you get sucked back in. And here's another special episode I'm going to start doing, James Quandahl, is out of the matrix. I'm going to talk to people about stepping out of the matrix and not jumping into this flow that society has created for us. Kind of like, what was it that Steve Jobs said, that most of the rules that you follow were made up by people no smarter than you. We constantly follow these stupid rules of life. What James Altucher talks about in Choose Yourself, his first really big book to just kind of open my eyes to a lot of things. It was the book I wish I had written when I wrote Push Play, but I'm not as smart or as talented as him. And I also had not done like he had done, which is written every single day for like 20 years, that stuff that nobody read, right? And then with the same thing with Skip the Line is, there's so many rules out there that really aren't rules at all. They're just what we've all kind of fallen in line. It's kind of like going to the DMV and you see the short line and the long line, and you default to the long line because you're like, well, the short line, there's got to be something wrong there. That's got to be for somebody with a Purple Heart or something, or there's some special VIP group that I don't know about. Nope. You could probably go stand in that line. And so it is lonely and it's hard. And I've told Jimlyn about that. And it was kind of like you. Kind of the same time, I was like, I just need someone who gets it. And she's not that, she's the most supportive and wonderful partner I could possibly have in this craziness, because she gets it. She's like, I know what you're doing, but you're right. I mean, it's like when you go up to a neighbor and they go, so what are you working on? What are you doing? My podcast. Oh, that sounds fun. Really? I'm writing a book. Oh, okay. Oh, did you hear that Jason Wright say he's writing a book? I mean,
Jason Wright, the unemployed guy next door. I wonder when his house is going to go on the market.
Yeah, why would he be writing a book? That's weird. Okay, yeah, that's good, buddy. Go. But then while they go, okay, well, I'm headed to play golf with the guys, and then we're going to go into our typical suburban, program life. And
but in 10 years from now, I mean, Jason Wright's a household name.
Yeah.
And it was overnight, right? Quote
right,
unquote,
of course.
overnight. He was
years,
but what is not known is the amount of times that you had to break through the wall of resistance. And I love the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield and the other book of his, Do the Work. If you're a creative or a creator, or you're wanting to take a new challenge or open a new door or go to the next chapter in your life, like read one of those books. Because when I was reading that book, I was like, this is about me. Like, he's took my thoughts but there is no overnight success. It is going to take time, and you have to become a different person, and you have to, it's much, much easier if you're not doing it alone. I don't know if you actually really can do it completely alone. It's
at some point, I think it's going to at least hinder the process in a massive way. And one of the things too that I want the listener to understand, going back to now, and granted, and this isn't for everybody, and I want to be cautious with that, because it's not, we need people out there doing the stuff. We need the people that are doing the work that allows them to have the country club membership and the, eating out on Friday nights and taking the 2 vacations, one to the beach and one to the ski trip, living that whatever quote unquote American dream life is. We need those people doing those things. So
you can do those things. You can do those things not exactly by the book either. You can do them
differently.
Absolutely,
you can do it differently. But here's what I've learned, and you and I, we brought this up. And by the way, the James Quandahl show. Are you going to name it the James Quandahl show? Have you decided that yet? That it? Okay, so write that down, listeners. The James Quandahl show. It's going to debut very shortly, because I'm going to keep pressuring this guy to get his interviews lined up, get them recorded, get it produced, and get this show out into the ether as soon as possible. But one of the things that I said whenever I was on what will be your show is that it has occurred to me of late that I've reached a point in my life where I don't want anything money can buy. Now, and you asked me the question, when did that happen? Did it happen after I started making quite a bit of money, or when was it in kind of the financial stage of life I was in? And I don't think I answered it as well as I would like to have on your podcast, because here is, as I've thought about that a little deeper, I realized it when I started doing the things that we are doing right now. Because when you're caught up in creating something, building something out of thin air, this conversation that we're having right now, it costs you and I $0. I mean, with the exception of the technical equipment that we put together to do this, but it costs us $0. And frankly, I will gain more satisfaction from creating something that was not there, which is this conversation and this podcast, more than anything I could go buy. And when you put yourself in a position to pursue those things, and all of a sudden you find yourself wearing a black t-shirt every day and upsetting your wife because she loves buying you beautiful
clothes. Now I have
to
interrupt you because I learned something yesterday.
What's that?
I'm curious if you knew this, because it was news to me.
What's that?
Did you know that black clothing helps to make you look thinner? And
wow.
And I mean, you're looking really thin today and looking real strong.
Yeah, exactly. I dropped 5 pounds whenever I put the t-shirt on, the black t-shirt.
That was news to me.
Yeah. Well, that is, I guess, an ancillary benefit for sure. But I tell you what, it sure does slow down my decision making. And that's
Yes.
the cool thing about this is like when you get to that point where you're pursuing things that just really rev your engine and you get excited about, then you don't, you find yourself in a place where I am right now, which is there's nothing I want that money can buy. Do I want to go stroke a check for the farm that Jimlin and I are going to buy and build our house? Absolutely. But if it never happens, if life never changes from right where we are, where I am going to go to our store and pick her up at the end of this day, and we're going to have dinner together, and we're going to sit on our couch, and we're going to make an amazing cup of coffee, even though I know Ben Greenfield would frown on me for drinking coffee at night. Oh, well, I'm a rebel. I'm coloring outside the lines. And we're going to watch a movie, and that's my satisfaction. And tomorrow I'm going to produce these podcasts that I've recorded, and I'm going to recall this conversation, and I'm going to text you probably about some crazy idea that I have. And you just end up in this space where you're like, all the crap that people are, again, I think I said this on your podcast, and listener, I'm going to say this over and over and over, especially for those of you who know me. I'm not judging. I don't care if you're rocking a Lamborghini. I don't care, and I don't judge you for that. I'm just saying that me, Jason Wright, personally, that would never bring me any form of happiness, And so that's the cool thing when you step out, and with that as kind of a launching pad. And it's kind of weird because listener, you're getting the opportunity to just listen in to one of mine and James's kind of just share sessions. This is what we do. But this one, because it's not on the Jason Wright Show, you're the guest. And so I'm going to pass the ball back to you, because you went through an evolution. You were running the corporate rat race. You were doing that. You were successful. And then something switched to where you said, I'm out. So kind of let the listener know what that journey looked like.
Yeah. So I started working in retail just before the age of 14. And my sister was a manager of a concession stand at a local hockey stadium up in Michigan. And I was begging her, please let me come work there. Please hire me there. I'll give you, I don't know, I might have said like, I'll give you my paycheck or give you half my paycheck. I just wanted to work. And she hired me and I started working there. And I worked there for 4 years. And then I went into clothing retail. And then for almost a decade to wrap up my corporate career, I was at Best Buy. And in that time period, I worked at 3 different stores in every position that you can imagine. I unloaded trucks. I handled returns. I fixed computers at Geek Squad. I did installations in people's homes. I brought TVs to people's homes. And at the end, I was running a store. And I had to make a decision. I had this guy I was working for, Tom, and he was a mentor and he was amazing. And I learned so much for him. I felt like it was like working for someone like Sam Walton, where he was just a retailer. It was in his blood. He knew how to make things look great. He knew how to take care of the building. He knew how to make the customers feel good. He knew just how to solve problems and get things done. And I learned so much from him. And I stayed in that building a long time, just absorbing as much wisdom from him as I could. And then he retired. And I think he was the first person to actually retire from Best Buy. There was lots of people who left and quit or went to go work somewhere else, but he was the first person to actually retire at retirement age. Wow. And I remember he was leaving, and they're like, well, how do we process this? Like they didn't really even know how to handle that at HR at corporate, because it's never been done. Like, what do we do with his stock options? When do those vest if he's not an employee anymore? Does he get health benefits still? Should we give him an employee discount after he leaves? All these questions. And I'm sitting there going, okay, if I stay here in retail, that's what I'm going to be looking like in 40 years. Mm-hmm. And I respect him. I still talk to him. I love him. I learned so much. And I said, do I want to be doing that in 40 more years? And it was an immediate no. I just knew immediately, no, I did not want to be doing that in 40 years. He worked so hard. I mean, he worked hard. He kept a rag in his back pocket. He would wipe down tables. He had these sayings like, if you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean. He had all these fantastic sayings that he would have, but it wasn't how I envisioned myself when I was in my 60s working that hard. I wanted to find a way to have my money working for me. I wanted to do something different. So I said, all right, so if I don't want to be doing this for 40 years, why do it at all? That was the question. If I don't want to do this in 40 years, why do it at all? And so I came and talked to Emily, my now wife, and I'm like, I think I got to leave. And she was just graduating college. So it was a good time. And I'm like, all right, well, let's just quit our job. I had just read the 4-Hour Work Week. So I was like, I could go like design this like flexible life. I don't think the FIRE movement was around then, but I was like, how can I work like 5-10 hours a week and then like go play the rest of the week? Like that was kind of what my mindset was. And so my wife and I scheduled a time on our calendar, and we're like, we got to both quit by this date so that our 2 weeks can be up. And then we're going to move to South Carolina from Michigan on August 1st of 2016. And we did it. We both put in our notices. And my boss at the time, his name was John. He's like, he didn't really understand. Like, what? You're just like quitting? Like, what are you going to go do? I said, I don't know. I'm just going to figure it out. He's like, oh. And I'm like, I'm just going to start a company. I'm just going to figure it out. And he was extremely understanding. I had this knot in my stomach you would not believe. I thought I was going to be sick before I put that notice in. I was like, what am I doing? Am I making a mistake? Like I'm moving up the ladder. Like I'm learning. I'm still learning. Like I've got all these opportunities. I could go work at corporate and run, a district or eventually run a region. Like I had that idea. And I was like starting to second guess it. Maybe the resistance was starting to push back against me and say, James, this is a horrible idea. You're making a huge mistake. Your family and friends are going to think you're crazy. And so I cheated. And I told him when he came in for the day, I said, hey, I have something super important I need to tell you today. So do not leave without me telling you. And he's like, all right. And so that way I had to do it at that point. Wow. So I walked in, gave him my notice. And you know what he said to me? He said, someday I could see myself working for you.
Wow.
And I would be honored to. I'd be like, well, that's great. I was like worried you were going to think I was nuts and yell at me, but you respected it. And so I'll tell you, it was not easy. Like we had a year's worth of savings. My retirement was in a good place. And we said, like, let's move to South Carolina and let's try and just create this 4-hour work week type life. And if it doesn't work in a year, retail is a very forgiving business where they would take me back at any age.
Yeah.
I know they would take me back. I could go work at a Staples or a Lowe's or a Home Depot like Jason.
Yeah.
And I could go, like, they're always looking for people. So if you are looking for a job right now and you're listening to this, I can promise you the retailers out there are desperately looking for someone who cares about people and loves to just give good service. And if you do care about people and you can learn to sell, you can make a very good career and make a lot of money and have a great job that will always be there for you, because in this country, we're always going to want physical places to go buy our products. Amazon's going to continue to grow. And I do a lot of work with Amazon, but I still like to go in if I'm looking for a TV or a computer and put my hands on something.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, we can go into the rest of the story, but basically, I thought that I was going to, it was going to be easy now, but like it had just begun. Like the learning had just begun. Like making it on your own is not easy.
Right. How old were you when that happened?
I was probably 28 or 29, maybe.
That's hilarious, dude. So that's the first time, listeners, first time I've ever heard that much detail of the story. I was 28. I was 28 when I did the exact same
thing.
I mean, that was the closest anyone has ever described my story I was at Home Depot, traveling around the country, going back and forth to Vinings, Georgia, where they're headquartered, from Houston. I was like, I'm out. I just can't do this anymore. Same thing. Great career. Just keep your head down, work hard, and you're going to just pop up the ranks. And retail, for it, to your point, anyone that's just interested in raw business, a P&L, personnel management, how to market a product. I mean, it covers. It is just hardcore, old school business, 101. And it is
Yeah,
a
I wrote an article a while back comparing working in retail to going and getting a Harvard MBA.
I
And
agree.
I
Yep.
argued that working in retail is going to teach you more about running a business than a Harvard MBA ever would.
Could not agree more. My wife, who has now is coming upon her 10-year anniversary with her store, did not go to college. She her education came, both her undergrad, her master's, and I would say now almost a doctoral degree in retail, people management, psychology management, grit, surviving, has come from being the owner of Hot Tots in Tyler, Texas.
Yeah.
And there are things that it was interesting when I went back and got my MBA. I was always, I think you and I've talked about this before, that I was very insecure because I went to I love my undergrad alma mater. I was the first member of my family to graduate from college. And the first degree in my family came from Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas. I'm very proud of it. But it's not a well-known national school. And I was consumed with vanity. I still got some vanity. I'm still going to wear a black t-shirt because James said it makes me look thinner. But at that point, my ego and vanity were much higher than I even realized. I thought, no, even though I'm a business owner, I've executed on some of the things that we're talking about. I thought, no, I have to have an MBA. Then I show up at business school, and it's a lot of people doing the things that I admired. I mean, they were working for, the top Fortune 500 companies out there, crushing it financially. And a lot of them were there because they wanted to do something like what I was doing, but I had not yet realized it. And so you said that when you started out, you realized it's not easy, and Lord knows it's not. So I went a little bit different route, right? I found a business to buy, and very much like you, I had everyone around me, and I had no family, no friends in Tyler, Texas, none. And I'm buying a real estate brokerage, a dead, tired, old Century 21 franchise. I mean, this was where realtors went to die in Tyler. At the point you walked in, and it smelled like an old dentist's office. It was wow. And I was 28. I didn't know anything about the town I was moving to. I had two small children. Rylan was 3, Abby was 2, and I'd never sold a house in my life. And here I was doing it. So people, whenever I would tell them, they'd be like, kind of like what your boss asked you, they'd be like, "You're going where to do what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I'm doing." Worst case scenario, I go bankrupt. And I always thought I would. I mean, that was kind of in the equation. I was like, at some point, this will get me into entrepreneurship. I'll learn enough, but I'm probably going to go broke at this. At some point, I got to be ready for that. But then whenever you cannot, Harvard can't do it, Kellogg can't do it. None of that. You fill in. SMU, Cox School of Business, where I went to business school. None of them can simulate the reality of walking in and going, okay, if I don't perform, nothing happens. This thing has to go. It has to go. And I'm the one that has to make it happen. And you can't simulate that. And when you're in that, you find out so much about yourself. So kicking it back to you, whenever you and Emily look at each other and you're like, okay, we took that first big leap. Now here we are in South Carolina. Now what? How did that go?
Well, at first, because up in Michigan, we weren't living together. And so we didn't really spend a whole lot of time with each other. She was an hour away. So at first, we kicked our feet up and we were living as if we were on vacation. I mean, we were going out to eat, we were buying good food, we were touring the new town that we were living in. We weren't even really, she was looking for a job, but I was just like, waiting on a job to appear out of thin air or something
Right.
and waiting to get inspired. I mean, I eventually was like, all right, maybe I'm just like, this is like my recuperation time from almost 20 years in retail management, which is a very hard business to be in. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. That was the worst part. At least you knew, oh, and you, even if it was going to fail, you're like, I'm going to buy this business and I'm going to go work in this business. I had no idea what I was going to do. Emily had graduated with a healthcare administration degree. So she kind of had an idea what she wanted to do. And she had worked in healthcare and senior living all through college and right after high school. So she started looking for jobs at assisted livings and nursing homes, which now that's what she does. She runs a 100-bed nursing home, assisted living, and memory care with 100 employees. And she's extremely gifted at it. But I didn't want to go back to a building. For some reason, I had this distaste about going back to a building each day. I wanted to create something different. And I remember really specifically, I was renting an apartment we rented an apartment for 1 month off of Craigslist. And we're like, we're just going to go down there and like try and find a place to live after that 1 month. So we only had 1 month.
Wow.
And we're renting from this guy. And I went and met with him at a local restaurant and had drinks. And looking back, I was just so naive. I said, I don't really want to work all that much. I want to just like make a lot of money, but not in very many hours, because I want to have flexibility and I want to have hobbies and I want to have interests. And I just look at people who work for 40 years and then at age 65 or 68 or 70 or whatever the age is now, they retire and they want to go golf and play tennis and travel, but now they don't have any energy or their joints have given up on them. I'm like, I'm going to do that stuff now. And I know now I wrote down his name this morning. I wanted to email him and get back in touch and tell him how naive I was, because that's not how it works. Like if you like now looking back, I work more hours maybe now than I did when I was in retail. But just like you said at the beginning, it's conversations like this. This is work right now. I'm working.
Same.
But guess what? I love it. And I chose this meeting. I chose this time. I'm sitting here. I don't normally put on shorts here, but I mean, I'm normally in just like athletic shorts and a t-shirt when we talk. But since this was being recorded, I put on a white polo.
Yeah, you got all dressed up for me. Wow,
I got all dressed up. White, I heard, makes you look bigger, and I'm trying to look a little bigger. But I mean, I'm now doing what I love, and I don't care how many hours it takes. I don't track it. Like I wake up each morning just like ready. I can't get all the work I want to do accomplished each day. I can't get it all done. And it's because I said yes to the things I wanted to do. Yeah. And I say no to things that drain me or bore me or are laborious or, but it took time to get there. Like that doesn't happen right away. When in 2016, unemployed, 1 year of savings, bouncing around different places to live, I said yes to everything. Yeah. Anything that was remote that I could do and learn a new skill that wasn't retailing, that I could apply some of the lessons I learned leading a team. And I said yes to. And, you talked about Ben Greenfield at the end, who was a good friend. And his book you were talking about was Boundless, which we launched in 2020 in January. And it was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And my job on that was the project manager. So I managed the launch. I planned the book parties in LA and Malibu and New York. I contacted the kombucha people in New York to come and have them bring the kombucha. I helped with the referencing of the book and helped create the website. And basically I did the whole project management soup to nuts of that book. And that was the first person I worked for in 2016. He posted on Twitter, and I had been listening to him for a while. And he posted on Twitter and said, hey, I've got this project. It's called a Christian Gratitude Journal, and I need someone to help me manage it. And I'm like, I could do that. No idea how to publish a book. No idea what a Christian Gratitude Journal was. No idea how to do a Kickstarter. But I emailed him and said, hey, I want to do this. I'm your man. You know, I have this much retail experience. I've got this much computer background. I'm willing to do it. He calls me and we talk for like 5 minutes. You know, Ben is very on point with his conversations, and he's like, I'll get back to you. I got some other people I'm talking to. I'm like, okay. And then basically it was like, I just started doing the job after that. There was no like, hey, you're the one, I chose you. Like, I just started working with him, and it's just led to so many opportunities. Like, I launched the Christian Gratitude Journal on Kickstarter in 2017. We doubled our fundraising goal. We tried to raise $15,000 and sell like 300 copies. We raised $30,000 and sold 600 copies all around the world. And then it was just project after project, working for him, and it just kept going. I just kept saying yes to anything. He's like, hey, do you have any interest in helping me develop a homeschooling program for my twins? I'm thinking of pulling them out of private school. I said, yeah, I could do that, and help design that program. And I planned trips for them to the Middle East and to Switzerland and Italy, and just learning all this stuff. I'm so grateful to Ben and his team and his family for the opportunities, because they saved me. I mean, I was here unemployed in a new town with no network, didn't know a single person here, jumping between different Airbnbs, sort of trying to figure out what I was going to do. I had no idea what my purpose was. I kept waiting for like a halo to come down from the clouds and say, James, this is your purpose. Go and do this. It never happened. But do you know what happened is I just started saying yes. And I started to find out what I liked doing and what made me feel good inside. And then I just kept praying for more work like that. And I kept saying no to what eventually, when I had the option to start saying no, I started saying no to things that drained me. And now here I am. I'm just honored to just now be able to sit and talk with you and share how hard that was, but from a place of like, you can do this. If this sounds like something you want to do as the listener, like, I'll help you do it. You can email me, but you can do it. I believe in you.
Well, and that's the thing too, that like a lot of the listeners that listen to this probably listen to the guys that have just blown up, like a Tim Ferriss. You mentioned the 4 Hour Work Week, which, you know, I read as well. And the it's funny because I read the book and I had never listened to a podcast in my life. And I'm lying in bed one day and just kind of scrolling through Apple Podcasts, and I see, oh, that Tim Ferriss, that's the guy that wrote that book I read. I'll see what he's about. First podcast I ever listened to or subscribed to was the Tim Ferriss show. And
we're going to put a plug out there, Tim. If by any chance you're down there in Austin listening to this show,
yes,
you can come on the Jason Wright show, and I promise that he'll do his homework and you'll just have a good time. So say yes, Tim. You know, take my message and just say yes.
Amen. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, especially now that, you know, I always thought back whenever I was still doing the Texas Titans, just, you know, as the main theme of the show. I was like, well, now Tim Ferriss is in Texas, so he's a Texas Titan. Surely I can get him on there. And, you know, they hear guys like that have been wildly successful and how they did it and how they just stepped out and kind of did their thing. Gary Vaynerchuk preaches it all the time. You know, just go. Don't care what people think. Just go. And hearing it from the guy, and this is what I want. Again, lean in, listener, lean in, listen to old Uncle Jason here for just a second. It's easy to listen to that from a guy that is just so wildly successful, who wrote the book Crushing It, and go, well, yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know, I may not know all of your story, though most of anyone who listens to Gary V knows his story, and it's a remarkable immigrant story, but you've done it. So now you're talking, it must be amazing to be you. But right now you're listening to two guys that are a far cry from Gary V or Tim Ferriss or Ryan Holiday or or James Altucher, fill in the blank. Ben Greenfield. We aren't even remotely close. But I would dare say, on the happy and fulfillment meter, we're not that far away from those guys. And it has nothing to do with the money they make, the books they write. In fact, you and I, James Quandahl, are kind of in a sweet situation right now. In fact, I'm gonna venture a guess, and whenever we're doing our 10-year reunion conversation of Iron Sharpening Iron, I'm gonna remember.
Wait, we got to choose a location though. Right
Oh
now, we
yeah,
should choose it.
yeah.
How about? Well, what's your first choice? I'll tell you mine after you
So,
tell me yours.
my first choice would probably be, just off the top of my head, snap, Boulder, because my daughter would hopefully be working. Hey, she might even be working for Keon, thanks to you, but who knows? So it'd be somewhere in the mountains. It would be cold. We'd be able to, because we're gonna have to take ice plunges. We're gonna have saunas. So we could just do it at Ben's place. I don't know. Maybe you could get us there. I'd say somewhere in the mountains, most likely Boulder or Telluride, somewhere like that. Where are you gonna have it?
The first place that came to mind for me was Sardinia, Italy, which
Wow.
is one of the blue zones.
There you go.
And
Okay.
I can see us drinking some Canal red wine, and
Okay.
they've got a lot of sheep there that they've got some great meats you can eat there, great fishing there, and they've got rockiness just all over. It would almost seem like a lot of that island's uninhabitable, but they find a way to do it, and that these people are. It's one of the longest living groups of people in the world. The highest percentage of centenarians are in some of them are in Sardinia, Italy. So I'd love to just check it out and see how they live. I know they love on each other. I know they eat good food. I know they drink a lot of wine. Their walks are just, I mean, they're like hiking in the mountains to go take a walk home. So that would be my choice.
Boulder, Sardinia. Okay, fine. If we have to, fine. The 10-year reunion show is going to be in Sardinia. I'm with you. And here's what I'm going to, because my memory is going to be good, because I'm going to continue to meditate and grow the gray matter and do the things. I'm going to stay in flow. I will remember that I said this, and I mean this. And listener, listen to me. Lean in again. If you're driving down the road, I know it's weird, but put your ear really close to have your wife take the wheel or somebody take the wheel, and listen really closely to the speaker. I think we're in a sweet spot, James Quandahl, because here's the deal. We're doing this for one reason right now: the fun of it. We're having freaking fun. We don't have an agent telling us, you've got to get to LA, you've got to do that gig in New York, get the book out. If you
do that, it'll sell 1,000 more copies.
Exactly.
You got to say yes.
Come on, because we don't have people that are living in the matrix trying to suck us in for their life in the matrix. We're outside, kind of like floating around here, having fun, learning, bettering ourselves, and having this opportunity to figure out what really freaking matters in life without the distractions. And Ben, personally, I watched Tim Ferriss from afar. And if you've listened to his show over the last year in particular, and Tim, again, if you're listening, come on, let's talk this out. I want to help me help you. You can tell that guy has reached the pinnacle of whatever success he could have possibly imagined, right? I don't think that Tim Ferriss could have ever got his brain around where he is. And I mean, yesterday I'm listening to his show, and he would not even mention a retreat that he would recommend for psychedelics and some of the things that he's experimenting with, or that he's really pushed for PTSD and those sorts of things. He wouldn't even recommend one of those retreats because he knew his influence was so powerful, it would do them more harm than good. It would be kind of like what you guys saw at Best Buy, or I saw at Home Depot. You create a new widget, and Best Buy says, yeah, sure, we'll buy that. Home Depot says, yeah, we'll buy that. And your life is destroyed forever because you can't fulfill. It just changed everything. And so,
yeah, he has a deal. If he's got the, I think it's called the 5 Bullet Friday. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's his newsletter.
If he puts a book in there, Amazon will oftentimes just sell out. He can take these books that haven't been bestsellers in forever, and they'll become Amazon bestsellers with one email, and it's just unbelievable influence.
Yeah. And I gotta believe, again, like I said, I've listened to him over the last year, and I think that Tim Ferriss, who he's been very transparent about dealing with depression and some of those things, that I think that he probably, God, here playing armchair psychologist, one conversation with Dr. John Deloney, and now I think I know everything, but about anxiety. But I just get the sense that he probably would probably kind of like to be back where you and I are right now. I mean, this is, and that's why I savor this, because I think we're going to keep going. I think we're going to keep pushing. I think that just being out there and hopefully doing like what you did for Ben Greenfield, what you have done for your clients is add value. And if you keep adding value, eventually people are going to notice and they're going to say, hey, come teach me that. Hey, come guide me at that. And so it won't be like this forever. And it can't be. I mean, I want, the Stone Chiseler that I mentioned to you. I want that to be a New York Times bestseller. I want this podcast to be downloaded 1 million times so that people can go, man, you know what? If that goofball from Texas can get on there and bark into a microphone and have a conversation with a guy in South Carolina that he met through the James Altucher show, then surely I can do something. I want that. But right now, man, and this is the point, listener. And by the way, you can take your head away from the speaker now. I don't want you to have a wreck. I'm just telling you, this is so much fun and there's so much fulfillment, and none of it has to do with anything material. You know what I've really gotten into here of late is the minimalists.
Yeah.
Do you watch what's it, Josh and Ryan, Josh and Ryan?
I think they were actually they visited Nashville and they were just on the
They
Dave
run
Ramsey
Dave
show.
Ramsey. They run the Dave Ramsey show, and it's weird because I had watched their first Netflix documentary a while back and thought, I love the concept, but I can't, I'm not into minimalism. I like stuff too much. And by stuff, I mean, I don't have, extravagant taste, but my clothes.
You like a nice cup of coffee, you know?
But then all of a sudden, as I started diving into the stuff that you and I are talking about, I started realizing, what would it be like? And listener, let me kind of reframe. Let's just park on minimalism for a minute and what it means, because people hear that, and if they know anything about that, they think, oh gosh, so you're going to wear one pair of pants, one shirt every day, have one fork, one knife, live in a house with stark white walls. No. Here's what I mean. What if every single day you went to your closet and you put on your favorite shirt? That's what it felt like. Because the only things that you would allow in your closet were those things that were your favorites. What if you got rid of all the other crap and allowed yourself to afford to buy the best coffee on planet Earth that you could possibly consume, with the exception of that guana stuff? I don't want any of the bat crap coffee that's supposedly the best. I don't want that. But whatever rainforest where the beans are massaged and perfectly, and they're fair trade approved, and they're delivered by little angels, they're ride on unicorns to your front door, whatever it is.
That's what I'm drinking right now.
There you go. I like that mug. Look, with a Gipper on it and all. Oh, wow.
My wife designed this for me. It's so for someone who can't see this, it's a Ronald Reagan coffee mug, and she put his face on one side, and then she put this quote on the other side. This is actually very minimalist right here. This quote: "Live simply, love generously, care deeply, speak kindly, and leave the rest to God." And that's a Ronald Reagan quote.
Tough to beat that. As a matter of fact, that quote, it almost echoes Josh and Ryan, the Minimalist new book, which is love people, use things, make space in your life to where you can love on people and just truly identify the utility value of everything that you have. And if it doesn't have good utility value to you, get rid of it and clear the decks for those things that are truly savor worthy. It's worth being in your life. And so it's just, all these concepts are really just kind of flooding my mind these days about clearing the clutter, focusing on what matters. Part of one of the things I've been really bad about, I told Jimlin this on the whole starting the Iron Sharpening Iron themed shows, is that I'm terrible at valuing relationships. I'm a loner. I get into my own world, and I have Rylan, Addie, and Jimlin. And those are the three relationships that matter most to me. And of course, my relationship with God, but with Christ. But as far as physical earthly relationships, we're not made to just be isolated in a silo, no matter how much we like it. And so I don't know, man, watching and reading their work and what they're doing, it's to the listener, I'm telling you, and I'm not trying to preach that you should be a minimalist or that you should go simplify or go quit your job tomorrow by any means. But I'm telling you, if you'll just take the time to, because that's what got us here. The thing that got you and I into this conversation was the fact that we took the step to go, kind of what you mentioned, is that there's nothing that says I can't. There's nothing that says that I can't. And here's a real sweet discovery that I've made, James, is that whenever you start to really value, not just pay attention, but just value the things that are right in front of you, that surround you every day, the people and those things that have the greatest utility value, then all of a sudden, all the garbage that everybody else is so caught up in and wringing their hands over and is just, ready to, their hair's on fire about, it doesn't touch you as much. It can, you're not immune to it, but it doesn't.
That's when I feel like, going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's when you start to feel sort of alone. Because like, at least for me, like you said about, not being and needing all this stuff. And for me, not really even following current events or the news or what's going on in Hollywood. I don't pay attention to that very much. But like normal people I meet, I have less in common in that way. So I start to feel lonely. Like, well, should I start caring more about going out to dinner more? Like, I just don't go out to dinner very much. Like, should I start doing, like, people want to meet for lunch or meet for dinner all the time. And I'm like, well, can we just like meet for coffee or tea? Like, I don't want to, like, I want to eat at home with my wife and have our food. That I don't want to, like, can we just, so it's like, I like left society in a way. And so it starts to get lonely.
No, I agree. And also, I once, it was on, of all things, it was on an episode of Mad Men where Betty is talking about her dad to her brother, and they were kind of making fun of him because one of the things, I guess, that supposedly he always said to them growing up was that conversation was an art and it should be treated as such. And what I find myself, the position I find myself in these days a lot is when you have conversations with people who are so either wrapped up in that, in the craziness that is, current events, or they want to tell you about their greatest win at work and what it meant financially or something like that. That's where I find myself going, it's not relatable. And also you have to hold back because you don't want to start, I don't want to be a pompous ass.
Exactly. That's the other thing. I do not want
to be that guy.
Yeah. And you don't want to judge. Like,
no.
If that makes you happy, please do that. It just doesn't make me happy.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, it is. And again, that's why, to the listener, those 5 people, and look, it doesn't have to be stuff like what we're talking about. I mean, like, you don't have to be wanting to be a creator, a podcaster, and someone who's, is making your own, growing your own herbs and worried about, mindfulness and all this stuff that we geek out on. It doesn't have to be that, but, at least have 5 people or some close friends where you can sit and have a stimulating conversation that feeds whatever it is that truly feeds you mentally, that is a stimulate that will help you grow your brain, that you'll feel smarter when you walk away and not dumber. And by the way, can I tell you this? After I got older, here's something that I learned while we're talking about friendships and that sort of thing. I started gauging a while back how I felt when I left a conversation with certain people. There's one individual that I went to business school with who is, and obviously I'm not going to say his name, but great guy, phenomenal guy, sweetest, kindest, most generous, funny guy. But I noticed after every interaction, be it a phone call or in person with him, I felt worse than I did before. I just didn't, we're just not we're not equally yoked in a lot of ways. And so now I don't spend time with that person. I'm kind if they say, hey, we want to meet up. I'll be delicate. I'll say, yeah, can't do it, whatever. And that's another thing I would say to the listener while we're on this topic is don't be just choose wisely who you spend time with. And if there's someone that every time you leave them, you're just like, oh my gosh, and you're replaying the conversation with them over and over and over in your head, that might be a good indication that, yeah, just stop spending time with them. Just say no.
Yeah. And maybe a good exercise would be to take out a piece of paper and write down the 5 people you spend most time with.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, are these the 5 people you want to be spending time with?
Yeah.
And if they're not, then do something about it. If they are, then that's great. You're probably in a really good place mentally and physically.
Right.
And and maybe there's not 5 people on the list.
Yeah.
Maybe there isn't, which that actually means you're in a great place because you don't have to remove anyone to add someone. Like, you're just going to be adding to your life. Like, that is a great place to be in. And maybe go to a local, I don't know, meetup in your town and just go do some things you like to do and find common interests. I was listening to a podcast recently. It was actually on the James Altucher show, and it was about persuasion. And I think it was, and they were talking about dating and what made people most successful dating. And they also did this with auctions, and it was people that found common interests.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you actually like to do? What would you do for free? It could be something work-wise, or it could be something you like to do physically. Some people say to have 3 hobbies in your life. One that keeps you physically fit, one that keeps you mentally sharp, and one that stokes your creativity. Mm-hmm. So write down your favorite things in each of those buckets, and then go find people who are doing those things and add them to your list of 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that was chess. I play chess in the park in my town every other week. And for me, it was tennis and writing. And those are, I mean, I could go on and on. I have a lot of hobbies. Reading, I mean, I could keep going on and on. But I like to surround myself with people who like to do those things as well, because I could talk about chess or books or tennis or writing or reading or any of that all day long. Like, I really could.
Yeah. Okay. And let's stay with that for a moment, because a lot of people out there, they're like, oh, God, yeah, it would be fun to have a podcast, but what would I talk about? And this idea, you hear people talk about, yeah, take the things you're interested in and figure out a way to monetize it or to do something with it and create a hobby from that thing. So you like to read, you review books. How did that? Anybody can do that. I mean, I wanted to create a YouTube channel and a presence, and I also wanted to start reading more books. I had, as James Altucher calls it, idea sex. I thought, okay, what's a way that I can create an accountability to create constant videos on YouTube and read 52 books in 1 year? Oh, I know. I will read a book and then do a video book review on YouTube every week for 52 weeks. And that's how I did it. Same thing. You like to read books. And I think what you have done with your book reviews and the attention you've got from publishers, talk about that a little bit, because I bet the listener, that to me is one of those that the listener's going to go, wait, really? That's how that happens? Go for it.
Yeah. So first of all, I created this 20-year plan, and I had 7 buckets on there. And one of the 7 buckets was career. And I was like, all right, well, what do I want to be doing in 20 years? And I wrote down, I wanted to write books. I wanted to have a podcast. I wanted to do speaking engagements, and I wanted to do coaching. I basically was like, I want to be like what Ben Greenfield's doing, because I was working with him, and I really loved how he was able to reach people and help a lot of people. I saw it firsthand, how many people he was helping.
Yep.
The problem was I wasn't doing any of those things. I was reading a lot, but I hadn't written anything since high school, and that was a long time ago. So I'm like, all right, well, I better start writing. So I start writing on my website. I'm like, what am I going to write about? Like, what are people even going to care about? And so I just started telling stories about my time at Best Buy, about good customers, bad customers, how to fire people, how to hire people, how to have tough conversations, how I was fired from one of my first jobs and what I learned from that. And I just kept taking all these things and writing them down. And then I was like, all right, well, it's really hard to get an article published every single week. How do I make this easier on myself? Well, I'm already reading books. So why don't I like start taking notes in these books, turning down the pages, and then like write a book review? So I started doing that once a month. I would finish a book. I'd go to my laptop and I would just type the quotes that I liked from the book and then fill in why I liked those quotes. And then I hit publish. And those articles were easy. Like they were quick, they were fun. I'd already done the work on reading the book. And it seemed like people actually liked reading them. And so I started doing this and sending the book reviews over to the publishers. I would just go on Google and be like, all right, who was the publisher for this book? And maybe it's HarperCollins or maybe it's Simon and Schuster or whoever it is. And I would just find their PR people. It's easy to do. And I would say, hey, I just wrote a book review on this book. I really enjoyed it. I just wanted to pass this along. And I hope you'll send it over to the author because I really enjoyed the book. I appreciate it. And I kept doing that. And do you know what started to happen, Jason?
What's that?
They started sharing my reviews on their social media pages and sharing them with the authors. And I got more traffic on my blog from that, from anything. And then two other things happened, two other unbelievable things. When I started all this, I was like, man, I would like, I heard once that we talked about Tim Ferriss, so I'll tell a Tim Ferriss story. You know, he has on his website, like, don't send me unsolicited books.
Right.
You know, I can only imagine the houses he used to live in, they're probably getting like 100 books a week, like hoping he'll read the book and publish it, right? Like he's moved for 5 years ago, but they're still getting hundreds of books. But I was going, I would love to get books sent to me. Like that would be the coolest thing ever. So you know what started happening? These publishers started sending me advanced copies of books.
Which, by the way, I got my first one this week. I feel like
really?
James Quandahl. Yes. Thanks to an introduction you made, Mitchell. They asked him to review the book, and he couldn't do it. I guess it didn't have the time or just wasn't in his wheelhouse. So he sent them over to me. So I've got my book. It's about core health and
core body health.
Yeah. So
and what's the publisher?
Let me find it for you. Let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. I've got this on Do Not Disturb. He's like, this might be something you'd be interested in. I was like, oh, I'm all in on that one. It's health and wellness. It's about core strength. And so I thought, well, this could be fun. Okay. It's here it is from Mitchell. Master Your Core by Dr. Come on, pull this here. Master Your Core by Dr. Oh, I'm going to butcher this name, so forgive me, audience. Bodana Zazulak from TCK Publishing.
TCK Publishing. Very cool.
Yep.
And so then books start showing up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months before they're released. And so I'm like, all right, well, now I have so many coming in. I can't write reviews on them all. I have to pick and choose. So I'm reading these books. This is something I could only dream of, like getting books early. That just feels like the coolest thing ever. And then so I read the book, and if I really think it will help people in their journey, and it's basically what I like to share is anything that helps someone not only thrive at work, because I think it's important to thrive there, but also thrive at home. Like how to put those two together and do a really good job at home and at work. So I share these, and I can now be like, hey, this is coming out on launch week. Yeah. So I let the release, I have the book review come out on the week the book comes out and help sell books. So that's actually, so the second cool thing that happened from writing these book reviews is this mentorship with James Altucher. That happened this exact same way. I got his book when it, I read it, and I had the review ready the week the book came out. And I mean, I spent a lot of time on it, and I learned a ton from the book. And then I wrote this review, and at the bottom of the review, I took right from the book, James Altucher's 10 ideas, and said, here's 10 ways James Altucher can sell, I think I said 100,000 more copies of his book, Skip the Line. And I took all the tactics I used when I launched Ben Greenfield's Boundless book and said, these things worked for us. And I was just creative and shared it. And then I emailed that over to James Altucher and said, hey, I wrote this review, really love the book. And at the bottom, here's some ways you can sell some more books, like enjoy. And little did I know, he was going to then have this program where he's mentoring people. And he emails me and says, hey, do you want to be one of the people I mentor? Like replies to my review. And he posted the review on his website and he sent the review out to his newsletter. And I said, yes, absolutely, 100%. And it was just by doing something I like to do. I wanted to write, so I started writing. I wasn't very good. I'm still not very good. I don't have grammar down. I mean, my writing just isn't grammatically really well done. And I like to read and I like to write now, and I just put them together. And now I'm having this conversation with you because of that. So
isn't that crazy? And the thing is that you did there, man. And there's so many people that are listening to this, and this is something that I hope the listener gains from that story is you emailed James Altucher. There was no rule. Now, a lot of the people listening go, what you can't just contact these people that have, a podcast with millions of downloads and New York Times bestselling author. And you can't just do that. James Quandahl just told you can. You absolutely can. It just takes a little bit of initiative. And granted, you may hit a ton of brick walls. I couldn't believe it. And of course, obviously, James's podcast is infinitely more listened to than mine, but he has like a 20% success rate on people that he asks to come on the show versus those who say yes. And so, or 20% of yeses to nos. And I was like, well, again, we're kind of in the sweet spot because we're going to ask people that we either know or have the degrees of separation is very limited. And so it'll just kind of grow from there. Most people say yes whenever I ask them, although I've had some no's. And so to the listener, it's not going to work like that every time. You're not going to get an email back from Gary Vaynerchuk when you say, hey, Gary V, I've got a great way you could really blow those K-Swiss out. Here's how you do it. But you would be surprised. They're human beings. And the cool thing about, at least from what I've seen, and this isn't, a universal comment, but kind of all the people that we've mentioned here, they seem to be just decent people, that it's not like you getting me a conversation with Dr. John Deloney, best-selling author, very influential, has a great following, great influence, great audience, a nice guy, a fellow Texan that's like, he had nothing to gain from coming on my podcast, but he's like, yeah, I'll do that. And it turned out to be such a great time. I hope for both of us, And so to the listener, just do what James did. Just find something unusual. Get out of the matrix. Stop thinking the way everyone else thinks. Do something, don't just do something unusual. Don't be a contrarian just for contrarian's sake, but it's crazy. If you just
one of the books I wrote a review on recently was John Lee Dumas's book. And I sent that over to his agent or his publisher and carboned him.
Huh?
And, I listened to a bunch of podcasts when that book was coming out. And he said he doesn't actually get that many people reaching out to him. He said, you'd be surprised, like not that many people actually reach out to me because they think I'm just too busy, that I wouldn't be paying attention, that I wouldn't actually reply. He's like, so I really don't get that many people getting in touch. And here's a podcast with millions of downloads, over 3,500 episodes. It was for 10 years. It was a daily show.
Yeah.
And could get any guest in the world. I think actually now for a lot of the guests, they're actually paying to be on the show.
Yeah.
To be on that show.
Yeah.
And he says he doesn't get a lot of contact. And so if you can, I mean, it's not like, hey, I see there's a philanthropist. I think he coined the phrase Twitter philanthropy.
Yeah.
And his name is Bill. I think it's Bill Pulte.
Okay.
And he he gets like millions of messages like, please send me money, please send me money, please send me money.
Right.
But do you know what he probably gets very little of? He probably gets very little people who did homework, got to know him, listened to his podcast episodes, read the content he puts out, and then genuinely, this is the key here. It's authenticity and being genuine. It's not just going after a big name because they can make you famous. It's going after someone who you actually really like.
Exactly.
Like, I actually really like James Altucher, and really he's helped me a lot. And I'm just honored to be able to help him. And so, you know, if you could reach out to like Mr. Pulte and help him with his Twitter philanthropy somehow, like he's going to reply to you if as long as he sees it, because they are putting their heart and soul into their work. And if someone resonates with that and can help them, and it's not like email them and say, hey, like, how can I help you?
Right.
Okay. They're too busy for that. If
Right.
you have to tell them how you're going to help them, and it isn't like, hey, I got this really cool business idea. Do you want to invest in it or be a partner? No, it's like, hey, I want to help with what you're already doing. I want to help make it bigger because I love what you're doing. I believe in what you're doing. I trust you. I've been listening to you for years, and like, I want to help, and I don't even want to get paid. Like, I'll do it for free. Like, you say that to anyone, you name the person, they're going to respond to it.
Absolutely. I agree. It goes back to that whole adding value thing. So, all right. So again, we're in, where are we? Sardinia? Because we nixed Boulder. You went nuts on us. We're going to the Blue Zone.
We're going to just go to Boulder for just like our annual
meetup. We'll drop in and tell, we'll stop. We'll have a Keon meeting and tell Ben, hey, guess where we're going, Ben? We're out. And so
we're going to tell Ben that we're doing the Manitou Springs incline.
There you
go.
And
we're going to beat his time.
I love that.
Which I guarantee we can't do.
No, good Lord, no. So what does your universe look like at that point? As you see it now, for you to be able to go, Jason, I did it. Here's what I'm doing today. Here's what I woke up and did today. Here's what I'm going to do at noon. What does it look like at that point?
That's a great question. And I'm going to be doing the things that only the things I say yes to. So I won't be doing anything else I don't want to do. I'm only going to say yes to what I want to do. And I'm going to be having conversations like this multiple times a week. I mean, this is what I love more than anything, is literally just this iron sharpening iron and getting to just talk. Because do you know what happens after this conversation? I mean, I've already got my notebook with a bunch of notes. I just like plow through my work with a whole new motivation and inspiration. Yeah. And we had to sacrifice an hour or 2 hours of time for this. So, I didn't get my article written yet. I did, I haven't gotten your Vitruvian letter yet.
That's right.
So we had to give something up for this time.
Yep.
But like, it is an investment like this. I'll be replaying this conversation. I'll be re-listening to this episode and trying to recapture some more takeaways. And so that would be one thing, continuing to have conversations like this. Two is like helping other people do what I have done at that point. And what I don't believe I've made it to where I want to be yet, but one of James Altucher's big thing is the plus, minus, and equals. And what we're doing right now is equals. Iron, sharpening iron. The plus, that's an easy one. When I talk with James Altucher or I read a book from someone like Tim Ferriss, or this book I'm reading here by Rabbi Daniel Lapin, like that's the plus. It can be virtual people. So the third part of that is the minus. So it's helping other people who want to get to where I am right now. Like they are working at Best Buy right now and they want to be self-employed and be able to have a podcast talking about chess or UFOs or house decorating or whatever their interest is. And I want to help those people to do that. I want to coach people on achieving their dreams. And that may be, how did that get promoted to the top of my company?
Right.
Like maybe that's what they want. I'm happy to help with that. Or maybe how do I save money and get in good health and whatever that is. And then the third part of that is like continuing to read and take all these conversations that I'm having and all the books I'm reading, and then writing, continuing to improve my writing, because I'm learning more about writing and storytelling every day, and like capturing all of that and writing it and publishing books and blog posts and guest posts and just sharing. People still read, and sharing what I'm learning with other people. I don't believe that I'm coming up with anything original. All I'm doing is reading a lot and listening to a lot of podcasts and doing what I'm hearing. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I want to keep doing that and then keep writing it down, because, right, I mean, most of these people that we've talked about on this show, they did the same thing. They followed in other people's footsteps, other Titans, other Texas Titans, and they've just did what they did. It's not that they came up with some new method of success. They just like did the hard work of showing up every day, doing something they enjoy, and making hard decisions. And I just want to keep doing that. I want to keep being challenged and trying new things and growing. And it wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't mind becoming a chess master too. Be able to beat James Altucher one more time in my life.
Well, and I think all of that is, I think that sounds like a very sweet life, and especially the part of being very confident in your no and equally confident in your yes, and only saying yes to those things that meet whatever grid that you've set for it, whatever metrics. That's because I'm with you on that. At this point in my life, it's not about money. It's not about things. It's just being able to only do the things that I really, really want to do. I think that is so valuable. And another thing too, again, I think that you said that is really good to kind of park just a little bit for the listener on, is you said that you're basically just listening and taking notes and then letting people know what you've learned. I agree with you, and nothing helps you learn that better yourself. But for the listener out there that says, I want to do this thing, like, I want to start a podcast, but Tim Ferriss has already done that. Gary Vaynerchuk's already done that. James Altucher's already done that. Ben Greenfield's already done that. Peter Attia, I'm a physician, and I would love to step out and do more content creation than actually running my practice. But Peter Attia has already done that. I'm reminded of the song, I Will Always Love You, written by Dolly Parton, supposedly for Porter Wagner. It's a #1 country hit, one of her biggest hits ever. Then it was a #1 hit. The biggest, if I'm not mistaken, this is completely from memory, but I think Whitney Houston's biggest hit, and sold more copies than Dolly Parton's original version. The point is this, listener, John Acuff once said this, and I think it really helped me kind of jump off, is, yeah, there's a lot of voices out there. People have said a lot of things, but they haven't heard your voice. There's nothing new under the sun. You said it, man. There's nothing new under the sun. Reading through Ecclesiastes and Lamentations, there's nothing new under the sun. But what is new is your interpretation of it. Like I mentioned earlier, I just interviewed yesterday John Henry Crawford, and he's a virtuoso cellist. Well, what makes a virtuoso cellist? Well, you can get the technical aspect of it. Everyone can play whatever piece from Haydn or Mozart or Beethoven. They can there's all these people that are just really, really good technically. But it's the individual that can take that thing that's already a masterpiece and put their signature on it. I mentioned that's how John Coltrane learned from Charlie Parker. He got technically really, really good. Then all of a sudden, John Coltrane was like, watch what I can do with this. And that's how he created his sound. And so to the listener, James Quandahl, you nailed it. You wanted to do these things. And it's not like you're like, oh, look at me. I'm the one who has figured out singularity. I've got it. Sign me up for the X Prize. It's just saying, no, here's my interpretation of it. Pretty much the same bedrock foundation of what so-and-so said and all these people said, but here's how I'm going to present it to you. And then that person that resonates with your voice goes, oh, wow. Thanks, James. Mm-hmm. So, all right, before I let you go, one quick question. Give me 2 books that I may not be reading that I should have in one of these? This is the on the ready shelf. Most of these are teed up to be read before the year's over. What should I add to it?
Okay. So I mentioned one briefly a second ago, and I don't know if you've heard of it. I'd be curious if you have. It's called Thou Shall Prosper
No.
by Rabbi Daniel Lapin.
Okay.
And I picked this up actually in Nashville in Dave Ramsey's studio.
Okay.
And for those of you listening near Nashville, the prices there were better than on Amazon.
Wow.
I'm always very frugal. I checked. And fantastic book. And it's the 10 Commandments for making money. And it's told from a Jewish rabbi perspectives. And it's fantastic. It makes you not feel guilty, one, about making money, and two, it talks about the dignity and morality of business and why business is good and why business helps more people out of poverty than nonprofits and governments ever can. And that if you have a business or work for a business, you don't have to be like, oh, I'm a CEO of a business, but I also do this like philanthropic activity, because I give back a lot. Like, you can give back a lot. That's great. But running your business and creating jobs and helping people to come out of poverty and feeding people's families, like, that's an honorable thing to do. Like, we need more people to do that. And money is holy. And he talks about the nobility of money and why it's good and why Jews have been so successful at accumulating wealth and how they've done it. And it's based on the principles from ancient scripture. So fantastic book.
Very cool.
Number two. Geez, that's a good question.
It can be one that you're reading right now, or one that that's in the library that you're always going to pull out whenever you need it.
This was a really interesting one. I'm just looking at my book list. Okay. The Company of One by Paul Jarvis.
Okay.
And the reason I really like this book is because, one, it's like the contrarian point of view. We have this idea in our society right now that to be a successful business person, you have to have a gigantic business that goes public and makes a lot of people millionaires, and you're having angel investors, and there's this whole culture of like startups, and I'm in a startup, or my startup failed, I'm starting my fourth startup, or I'm going to make it. But this is basically that there's nothing wrong with having a small business that does $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year and supports your family and doesn't have any employees. And he talks about like that cultural, that need for us to scale and become huge. And then you're no longer like serving your customer anymore. You have to have other people serving customers. And now you're just an executive. That doesn't have to be for you, and doesn't have to be for everyone. And that book came to me at a perfect timing because my business was growing and I was really contemplating bringing in more people to help me with the growth. And it made me reimagine what I could do. And I basically had to turn away some business that I was doing instead of growing, and only saying yes to some clients that were, frankly, they were paying more, but less of them. And like that, it was enough. Like, it was enough money, because if my main business, I talked about the three things I want to do: podcast, writing, and coaching, and speaking is number 4, but none of those are making me any money right now. Like, none of them. I'm doing them all because I enjoy them and I love them, and it's challenging. My consulting business is making money, but guess what? If I continue to scale it and I start to have more employees and I take on a bunch more business, guess what I won't have time to do anymore is do the writing, the podcasting, the coaching, and the speaking. I just won't have the time, and I won't have the energy. I'll be too drained. And so the Company of One makes you feel comfortable with doing that. So I would say that's a really good one for people to listen to or read as well.
I love that. I'm going to grab that book. I have not read it. Haven't even heard of it. I'm glad that you told me, because that's kind of my mission, is to keep it to where, not get caught up in, because like I've told you, some of my consternation with my coaching and consulting business is that, same thing. I could scale it, but man, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation, and so I think that's a great message. And by the way, I have to mention, because we haven't really even dug into your consulting business, your Amazon store business, and your Amazon management business. So here's what I want to do with that is, are you still going down the path of your course with James?
Okay, hold on. Let's pause 1 second, okay?
Yeah. While James has stepped away for a brief moment. So he actually is managing Amazon stores. So, which seems like a lot of the things that you see on Amazon that are purchased, there are people that are setting up stores that can have almost as much success, if not more, than their own personal website. So if you're selling vitamins on your own personal website, most people that are successful, whether it's a supplement company, whether it's selling knitting supplies, they probably also have an Amazon store, which can be a nightmare for some people to navigate. Well, you can hire a consultant like James Quandahl to actually set up and manage that store for you. That's what he's doing as that's how he makes the income to support his content creation business. Well, here is what he's working on with James Altucher. James is like, James Altucher said, I want to set up an Amazon store. I've wanted to, but it just seemed like it would be an absolute nightmare. I don't know where to start. I've started it a few times and I get frustrated. I would like to know how to do that. So what you should do, and again, listen in, this is where the contrarian thing starts to kind of get your wheels turning. James Altucher has told James Quandahl, you should create an online course on how to start an Amazon store. Boom. Amazing. Okay, you're back. I just described the whole way from you. Now you create these Amazon stores for people, which is a nightmare. And it's what probably keeps a lot of people from actually pursuing that side hustle. Or again, like I mentioned while you were gone, people actually have their own website. They're selling their vitamins and supplements or their knitting supplies or, whatever the case may be. Most of them that are successful are also going to have an Amazon store as well, but they just have no clue. They don't want to navigate the waters that are Amazon. And so a James Quandahl can come in and say, here, let me do that. And so in your mentoring process with James Altucher, he's like, you should write a course on this. I want to do it. I'm a smart guy and it's a nightmare to me. If there were a course out there on just really, here are the things you must do to be able to set up an Amazon store, I would take that class. And so he has encouraged you to create that class. So what I'm thinking is that once that class is launched, because I know it will be, because between James Altucher and your buddy Jason Wright, we're going to make sure that happens.
Well, what if I just disappear? I go cold.
No, you won't do it. We're going to hunt you down. You're in too deep, my friend.
Because here's the issue with the course. I heard you asked what the status was, and just like I mentioned about growing your business to where now you can't do these other things you love. That's exactly what I did. There's always this ebb and flow. So now I'm sitting here, okay, I want to do this stuff and I have to pick and choose which things I'm focusing on. And I'm not making as much progress on this course as I wish that I had been or that I have, And so that's a difficult part.
Okay. So what we might need to do, because, I'm writing a course as well on business acquisition. So maybe we need to set aside for one of our weekly or bi-weekly calls, rather, that we're just going to tackle your class and make some headway. Maybe it's the opening module. We just say, okay, opening module, like you've told me before, just getting the paperwork set up, and we just go, all right, that's the goal for today. I'll help you with that. And then I'll do the same thing on my business acquisition course. I get you to, all right, what do I do to this? What do I do when it's time to do this? How do I negotiate? What if the owner says no? And we'll do the same thing. So how about that?
I think that there's this tendency when you're creating something new from nothing to want to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then you don't do the first step because you're afraid that one, either it won't be perfect or B, maybe you're afraid it will be perfect.
Yeah.
Which one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've kind of learned, it's just a matter of taking that first step and putting something on paper. And I have to swallow my pride and take my own advice and do that. But it's doing these things and and trying to be different, not necessarily trying to be different, I guess. I'm not trying to be different. I'm just trying new things every day. It's hard every single day. It's like, why me? Like, there's other people that could be doing this better than me.
Mhm.
Like people that know how to write or who have backgrounds in broadcasting or storytelling. I'm a retail manager who dropped out of college twice, actually never graduated. And like, why me? That doubt never goes away. And you may be listening to this and go, oh wow, he's got a lot of really good stuff going on. Like I do. I'm so grateful. I have a lot of really good things going on. But do you know what has not gone away? The doubt.
Mhm.
And do you know what? That doubt actually grows. It gets
Mhm.
louder because as you're doing new things and you're trying new things and you're helping people, the resistance or the devil want to stop that.
Mhm.
So it will make your life more complicated potentially.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why going back to the beginning of our conversation, those 5 people you write down are so important because like what Jason said, he's like, well, let's just figure this out together
Let's do it.
because you need those 5 people to get through those seasons. And it's when you don't have those people and you're just in the dark in your house trying to figure it out that you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right, James Quandahl, we're going to do this again, brother. We're going to do another iron sharpening iron, but tell the listener where they can find you right now, how they should all sign up for Wise Men Wednesday. They should sign up for the Vitruvian letter as well. The two most phenomenal, jam-packed, low carb newsletters in the universe. So how can they subscribe to that and how can they find out about you?
yeah, so if you go over to my website, you can get the Wise Men Wednesday newsletter. And it's basically just a recap of what I learned that week and the posts that I wrote. And in a couple weeks here, it's going to also include the episodes of the James Quandahl show. And you just go to my website, quandahl.com, and I'll spell it for you because I think someone just made it up some long time ago. It's QUANDAHL.com. Or you can just look me up on any social media page, James Quandahl. You'll find me on any of them. And, get in touch. Like I said, I would love to help you achieve your goals. And if that's us hopping on Zoom or exchanging emails or me opening a door or introducing you to someone, my network is your network, listener. Like I want to help you. And I will. So find me.
I love it. And I'm living proof that he is good. He's good to his word. So James, this was awesome, man. This was good. This was so good. I can't wait for our next call. Thank you for being on the Jason Wright show. I cannot wait to hear our episode on your show. And here we go, brother. Let's just keep it going. Just keep it going.
It's an honor. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Jason, for having me on the show. And congrats on the Jason Wright show. It's a success. And I'm a listener and I can't wait to listen to the next episodes.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. All right. Sit tight.